How's it going, folks? I'm Matthew. This is Lemora's Cards, and today we're taking a look at the Snowy Summit cEDH event that happened just yesterday as of this recording, but this past weekend by the time you're seeing it. This was a 129 player cEDH event in person that we're gonna be talking about today. It's got some pretty interesting decks. There is, of the two events I've been able to look at this past weekend, there were two like giant outlier decks that kind of dominated either of the events, and we'll get to that shortly, but there are some really interesting ones here, so I want to talk about this one, and this is the bigger of the events that I have the stats for anyways. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. We're getting super close to 10,000 subscribers. Let me know what you would like to see as a little 10K celebration. You can also support me over on Patreon at patreon.com/Lemora'sCards. That's in the description as well. Get access to coaching, private deck advice. Probably going to be looking at doing some behind the scenes stuff over there and some more changes to the Patreon. And I think with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and hop into it. Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product, get anything that you want, really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try. First up, we're taking a look at the meta breakdown. The most popular deck was Tymna Kraum. Didn't do very well. One top 16 out of 13 entries for a 7% conversion rate. Not great. That is very low for Tymna Kraum. And then you can see kind of the outlier here. Sisay getting 4 top 16s from 8 entries, 50%, and that means they're 25% of our top 16 decks. So we might be running through the Sisays a little quicker than we normally do. And then another major deck, 0 and 7, Rograkh. If you take a look at Final Fortune, that event was completely dominated by Rograkh the same past weekend, but here not doing very well at all. Then we got Nadu's 2 and 6, and then we have a bunch of zeros of our other decks that kind of stand out in popularity. Magda, none. Stoli, none. Kinnan, none. And then we kind of drop into like some 3 ofs and 2 ofs and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of 1 ofs. Not much else to say about the meta breakdown. It is really kind of weird to see Tymna Kraum, I think, didn't do that bad in Final Fortune, but might start looking into doing like a full meta breakdown for like the week's worth of events, if that's something people are interested in, to really see like week by week how things are looking. And especially comparing this to the Final Fortune event would be really wild. First up, we're taking a look at one of those Nadus that made it. We're still seeing this list kind of get figured out. Let's see if anything really stands out here. Some tutors with Tezzeret and Invasion, just a couple dorks, Quirion Rangers, so we're probably on a Shia. We saw that with the, not in a tournament list that I've covered yet, but the cEDH beginner breakdown for Nadu, we covered a list that featured that, so it might be a combo we start to see more and more of. We are running the tap untappers for some staples like Lotus Cobra, Springheart, and Antuco. We are seeing Volatile Stormdrake here over Gilded Drake. That's something I've seen a bit with the Nadu decks, probably specifically to deal with things like Collector Oof, which can shut down their targeters. Volatile Stormdrake having the flexibility to take control of something or just let the thing die, choose not to pay the energy. And then we do see something pretty similar to the Gold Sabertooth list we looked at in that last video with the Nissa here, Tireless Provisioner, Goot Swarm. So really leaning into like the landfall stuff with Ashaya, Lotus Cobra, having access to those loops. We do see Unctus as another targeter. Nothing standing out like crazy. There's no Tribute Mage, which we do see pop up every now and then. We are on the Thoracle, not all of them are. Sorceries, just these 4 tutors. Instants. So we are on the Summoner's Pack, which seems good in the list. Essence Flux. 2 of the cards people can't seem to make their mind up on. The Sea King's Blessing and the Sylvan Paradise. I've been seeing less and less of these effects. I think Gold Sabertooth's version of his very similar build to this wasn't on them. Hard to say. It's starting to seem like more people or more successful lists that I'm seeing are opting not to run them, but we'll see how it ends up shaking out in the long term. And then just good, cheap interaction, ways to protect your stuff. Artifacts. We are on the Shuko, the Greaves, and the Umbral Mantle, so all our free targeters. We're also on the Conqueror's Flail, which we've been seeing a decent amount of, and the One Ring, and then just some fast mana. We are on the Earthcraft here. Pops up every now and then. Rhystic Mystic, of course. And we're on 31 lands. We're still seeing the counts kind of get ironed out, but 30 plus is what you should expect. That 30 to 34 range seems about right. Less of the cutesier lands that Teleria or the lands that can be a creature and then target themselves. None of that. We are still on the Field of the Dead. So like some of the better cutesy Nadu cards, but none of the like really wild ones. Next, we're taking a look at Malcolm Tana, which is a deck I have not really covered recently. And and got an interesting inclusion in Oko. Makes me think this is like a grindier version of this. Let's take a look. So we've got Allosaurus Shepherd. This was a cEDH stable not that long ago. 2 good dorks, Ragavan, Siren Storm Tamer. Of course, we're going to be, especially in a grindier version of the list, we're going to be looking to run some pirates to get some extra value, as well as nice ways to get access to our good old Glinthorn Buccaneer to go infinite. Magda usually pops up in these kind of decks. If you're generating any decent number of treasures, you can search up Visit Perun, which also shows up in some of these styles of the Malcolm Tana deck list. And also Eldritch Evolution Tana into it. It comes up occasionally. So we're on the Stormdrake again over Gilded Drake. Some people might just like it. Again, like this is very good against the Collectors that also shut out Malcolm's ability to combo. We got Bergie, which I really don't expect to see in this type of list. I mean, we've got 21 creatures. Bergie is just a pretty good card and does let you discard cards to a kind of a greater effect, but that usually having to force a discard isn't as much of a thing to get Glinthorn going to where you would run Bergie just for Harnfell. Maybe they are kind of jamming spells as we get further down. But seeing like Wandering Archaic, Facebreaker, you know, Niv Mizzet, this will make me think like this deck's trying to turbo out and Storm. That's usually where we see Bergie, and it isn't even that popular for those decks right now other than Rog Size. Sorceries, 3 Tutors, and a Jessica's Will. We got pretty cheap commander that we're trying to get out really quickly. And, you know, if you're running a Harnfell, you know, J-Will and a Harnfell, hey, I love doing it in Rog Size. Instant. So, yeah, more on the reactive side. So, like, Offer You Can't Refuse, Strict Serenade, Mana Drain, Trick Bind, Force of Vigor, Flare of Denial even. Like, these really lean much more reactive than proactive, trying to deal with threats as they occur. We also see that we're on the Brain Freeze, so we're going to be breaching. Instant Speed Tutors, cheap and free interaction. Flare of Denial especially, because you'll know that most Malcolm players are very, very greedy typically, and they don't want to sacrifice Malcolm or kill it or block with it or whatever. They'd rather just let you hit them with their Ragavan or their Tymna or whatever. But if you're going to die, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And we have Duplicate, Stormdrake, and Fimage. I don't count as actual blue creatures. Neither do I with Phyrexian Metamorph. So really it's Niv Mizzet, which you never ever want to sacrifice unless things are really bad. And then like 2 other actual blue creatures, plus Malcolm. Artifacts, whole bunch of fast mana, some rocks. Birthing Pod, pretty typical here. We have lots of ways to, you know, sacrifice this little Magda and go get a Glinthorn Buccaneer. Or, you know, sacrifice a Delighted Halfling, go get a Dockside. Like, lots of really good things we can chain up to, even if we don't have like an actual combo that we chain through with Birthing Pod. You know, like Pod, Tana into Wandering Archaic, pretty decent upgrade. And then we are on the One Ring. Enchantment. So we got some cooler stuff here. There's the Breach. Carpet of Flowers. Good when it's good. Curiosity. Keen Sense. 1, turn our Malcolm into draw engines, things like that. You can also pop these on a Glinthorn Buccaneer and have like the in-step cleanup thing you can do. Also, it works with Niv Mizzet. Put it on there. You can win the game. Draw your deck, kill everybody. Maybe have to loop it at some point. But Counterbalance, leaning pretty reactive, or really trying to like establish the board and protect it. No power balance showing up here. Survival of the Fittest, creature combo deck. The Breach, Rhystic Mystic, of course. And then 27 lands, Cavern on Pirate, Gaia's Cradle. We're on like what, 20 creatures? 21? Anything else standing out? No Surveil land, none of the other newer utility lands. I don't think we saw anything from MH3. Oh no, we did. Strict Serenade. That's about it for the new cards, I think. And that slots in pretty well, especially if you're on the more reactive side. Next up, we got Thrassios, Vial Smasher. I better see some Necro Dominances in here. I'm sick of these creature decks. God dang it, it's a creature deck. Probably doing more of the Curious Control style. People don't really run those like Curiosity effects so much now. They're kind of bad. We got the best dorks, and a decent amount of them. 4 is pretty high right now. Ragavan, Volatile Stormdrake, again over Gilded Drake. Very strange, because I had stopped seeing this card for like 2 weeks or something, and then so far it's 3 decks in a row. Temur Sabertooth, go infinite with Dockside, or like our Flesh Duplicate, Spellseeker, which doesn't always show up in these creature piles if they're black, but it's usually still good enough, you know, especially if you're running like Neoform and Eldritch Evolution. We got a decent amount of creature synergy stuff here. Notion Thief, a card I've been thinking about again. It's very meta dependent. If you expect very grindy games, it's very good. And it can even be good in a turbo meta, but it does require you to have a lot of mana. But if you're in a meta where wheels are being played a lot, this can be 4 mana in response to a wheel win the game. But the prevalence of Bowmasters, of course, made this card start to look a lot worse at being a 3/1 in the right meta game. And if you're making the right call for the event, it can be a good include. And we're doing the Seedborn thing. Our mana value is looking pretty high. We're probably still on Nas, but we're getting to the point where it's so high we're not sure. Tutors, generically good cards, mean bet. We're on a wheel of our own. Almost a little surprised to only see a single wheel with Notion Thief, but you don't have to lean too heavily in it. I mean, all your opponents will be running a wheel more than likely. Our creature tutors reanimate with no real target other than like, oh, somebody Dockside got countered, use it, you know, use it on an op agent, whatever. Just a good card. You've bow mastered my Notion Thief. Let me reanimate it. Especially Born Upon a Wind, reanimate it. Let's go. And then Deluge as a board wipe. I definitely prefer, we'll see if we're also on Fire Covenant. I definitely in this kind of deck, I mean, we're on 19 creatures, whole bunch of dorks. I definitely prefer Fire Covenant in that kind of shell. We'll see. Instance, we got offers and spell snares showing up. Okay, Vial. We're also on the Fire Covenant. Okay, then it's acceptable. We're not on the Nas, so I was right about that. Word of Calling, we're on the Born Upon a Wind, Rograkh, Abrupt Decay. Our interaction is a little all over the place. Like I don't always expect to see abrupt decays in this kind of list or spell snares. We're on the Pyroblast, no red elemental. So an interesting combination for the instance where there's just a few things that kind of stand out a little bit for me at least. This almost reads more like a non-blue player who started playing this deck or something, but I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking everything. Artifacts, bunch of mana, the One Ring, we're on Basalt Monolith, kind of figured. Enchantments are on the Training Grounds, Chthonian Nightmare, which is a nice new option that this deck got access to. We're on the Dress Down, that's kind of interesting. Way to get infinite mana with Dockside Extortionist with Chthonian Nightmare. We're on 29 lands, pretty heavy on the land count. Running Cephalid Coliseum, that's not common in these high color piles really at all. Are we on Endurance? No, so it's not like an Endurance loop kind of thing. So yeah, Cephalid Coliseum, not a card I expect to see in these kind of piles. Hedge Maze showing up in a 4-color pile. That's a bit more of a cost, but I still think it's really good. Namo for our ring, decent Cradle deck. Yeah, for the most part, everything else looks pretty reasonable. A couple choices that seem just a little different than what I expect. So kind of interesting stuff to see. Welcome to TopDeck.gg, your community's home for everything competitive Magic has to offer. Whether you're hosting an event, playing for a huge prize, or trying to advertise your store to thousands of players, we've got you covered. Using intuitive pairing software, playing Magic is a breeze. All your players have to do is sign up online, then scan the QR code in store. Give your competitors the gift of perfect information as their bracket updates in real time. Then, when the match is decided, our self-reporting software saves you time and leaves paper match slips in the past. Leave the heavy lifting to us so your community can sit back, relax, and have a great day of playing Magic. Next up, we got Teferi, Temporal Archmage. Mono blue Teferi, going off with a Chain Veil. Let's see what we got. Tezzeret gets a Chain Veil. That's pretty good. We got Walking Ballista to get people dead. Not many creatures. Trinket Mage to tutor up. We'll see what ones that we have access to. Kitten, phenomenal with Teferi. Phyrexian Metamor, just a good card. Only clone that we have access to here, but we also have like lots of ability to tutor for artifacts and not a lot to tutor for creatures, so kind of makes sense to prioritize just that as your one of. Then we got Hullbreaker Horror to get us a dub, and then Urza is just a pretty good card and what I imagine is a pretty artifact-centric list. Sorceries 13. As many cantrips as you can shake a stick at. Savor the Moment. It's another one that I've seen in like this kind of deck when I've covered it before, or other mono blue decks. With Teferi specifically, he kind of can be your untap step because he gets to untap for target permanent. So like it's kind of just a 3-mana extra turn spell for him. This is cool. And in general, you see we're running Capture, Temporal Manipulation, Time Warp, Karn's Temporal Sundering, and Expropriate. So going wild with the extra turn spells. Instance, whole bunch of stuff. Oh, we're running like, okay, I expected a Brainstorm. I did not expect to see Opt. It's here, and Peak, which Peak at least has some, decent utility. Opt. Okay, we're here. We're Stellar League gamers. Repeal. That's kind of cool. Sink into Stupor, a nice new option for mono blue. War of Invention gets our artifacts. We did not see a Fabricate. No, we did. It just has this absurd Transformers art. Moxfield, please give me a way to normalize all this art, guys. I'm losing it here. Yeah, more extra turn spells, lots more free interaction than most we can jam into a deck. And then 28 artifacts. What else do you expect? So we got the fast mana, the good stuff. Grafdigger's Cage, little bits of things that shut out stuff our opponents do. We don't do too much. Manifold Key and Voltaic Key. So running both of the key effects to untap some of our artifacts. Maybe we can net mana. Maybe we can draw cards with the One Ring. Maybe we can just use it on our Chain Veil. We'll see. Sensei's Top, Vexing Bauble, which is a little spooky when we have so much free interaction. I think this is probably a card you're more likely to just deploy when you're ready to look to win in this deck. Of course, going earlier in turn order and being able to cast a couple, bits of free mana and then end on a bauble can really be disruptive to opponents. So just a flexible card. The ball, we're on Basalt Monolith. Are we on like Power Artifact? We are. Okay, so that's another way to make infinite mana. Lithoform Engine. It's another thing we can do some poppy shenanigans with. Trinisphere, another way to help lock out our opponents. And then Chain Veil, once we get this, we're able to use it, untap our Chain Veil. If we have the mana to be able to untap it and then keep activating Teferi over and over, we can pretty easily win the game. Throne of Eldraine, a card we saw a lot of when the set first came out, and not so much here, although this is a super artifact-centric one, and if you use Teferi, and this is one of the 4 permanents you untap, you make an absurd amount of mana. Same with Chromatic Orrery, and of course we're on the One Ring. Thran Dynamo even showing up here, wild. And then, yeah, the Mystic Aristic, Copy Artifact, card we see more and more of, but it especially makes sense in decks like this. And then Power Artifact, we have lots of artifacts with like mana cost involved in their activations. They can also be used to go infinite with Basalt Monolith. And then lands 27 with the MDFCs. Not a crazy amount of utility options here. Manamos makes a lot of sense. Inventor's Fair. You love taking extra turns and comboing off with artifacts is the deck for you right here. All right, here's the Sisays. There's 4 of them here. So I'm not going to talk about every single card in these Sisay decks. We're gonna be skimming. We're going to give it the Rog side treatment. They're on the Okaun, and then the other kind of like must-run planeswalkers. Creatures, lots of dorks, Bloom Tinder. We're on the Felia, which is a new option. Pretty notable that you can like flash it in on end step, go attack with it, exile somebody's op agent, and then go off with Sisay. Ruby, not one we've seen a lot of, but it is a 2 mana, 2 different colors legend that in Gruul, which they don't really have many Gruul options at 2 mana that they opt for. And it's just a dork. So it really only costs like 1 mana functionally, being a hasty dork. We are on the Rocco, Silvala, those are the main standouts. Colossal Sky Turtle, for the most part, pretty stapley, standard-ish, other than Ruby. And then the new option, Felia, which we're not sure how many Sisays will be on. I guess we'll get to see. Sorceries, run the 3. You guys know, they only run up to 4. The only thing missing is Eldritch Evolution here. Instance. First Strict Serenade, I believe I've seen in a Sisay build that I've covered. Offer You Can't Refuse, Abrupt Decay, Soul Partition, not that popular either. They get to do the little dockside thing with it if they want. And again, it can just exile something problematic. Opposition Agent having Flash, if your opponent has enough mana, potentially like this is a really awkward removal spell that basically doesn't even work. We're on the Covenant. Artifacts, pretty much what you would expect, plus Aether Vial, which I've seen in 1 or 2 Sisays I covered, I think, or that I've looked at. A pretty cool little option. We're pretty creature heavy. We got them at lots of different mana values. There's especially a lot of 2s that we can just throw into play and kind of go wild. Works pretty well with the Revi too. Cauldron, of course, and then Birthing Pod, which is another option that's like not that popular, but shows up and lines up pretty well with our game plan. Enchantments, these are pretty standard. Cultists of the Absolute showing up, no Oath of Nissa, which is another one that, is pretty popular. And then 28 lands, we are on Cradle, and just a bunch of duels. Nothing else too wild standing out. What do you know? It's the coolest deck in cEDH, Rog Thras. We talked about this list a whole bunch on the channel, even though I have betrayed it and started playing Rog Sai again. It's still a cool deck. Still pretty powerful. We're infinite mana dot deck, so we have lots of different combos like Devoted Druid with Machine God's Effigy, Cannon Basalt, Hullbreaker Horror, and any mana rock basically in this deck. We can go infinite with Dockside with Cloudstone Curio if Dockside count as 3, and then Cloud of Fairies with Cloudstone Curio with a Guy's Cradle if you have enough creatures. Notably, we're not on any of the creature bouncers, whatever you want to call them, where there's no Temur Sabertooth and there's no Baron. The other standout thing is we're on Trinket Mage, which doesn't have like the craziest number of things to search for. I mean, it's good to just use it and go get Mana Crypt or Expedition Map in this deck, but it goes especially crazy with Displacer Kitten because you're able to just go get a 0 rock, cast it, trigger Kitten. Go get a 1 rock, cast it, trigger Kitten. Basically put all your 0s and 1s into play with Trinket Mage, which is pretty nice. Sorceries, we are triple wheeling, which is not common at all. And notably, we're not on 6 as well, which is like an option people argue about whether it's good enough, but really opting to try to take advantage of our big mana. That's the main reason to run these wheels. I've done 2 wheels and felt pretty good about it. Can definitely go with all 3. And then we got some tutors and Git Probe, which is pretty nice little option. I think it makes us slightly more likely to run Mystical Tutor, a card that some of these decks have run. But really just like check if the coast is clear, see if I can jam. Crack top deck tutors, which you don't have that many of compared to like Rogsai, which also runs this. Instance, we're on Quick Reflexes. I think is a bit worse if you're not on one of the creature bouncers. I mean, it still can protect like a Druid, a Kinnan, whatever. But because we don't have like a true creature only combo, you're more likely to run into the issue of they Fierce Guardianship my Cloudstone Curio than it is they Swords to Plowshares my Dockside, just because there's way more cards that interact with those type of cards. Of course, it's like very hard to beat if you Quick Reflexes your Kinnan and the Basalt's already in play. Good luck with that. Both the flares, one of the few decks that gets to run the red and blue flare, forces no force of negation artifact. So we're on the Candelabra. So we're doing that. We're untapping our Cradle. We're on the map to go get it. Cursed Mirror, we run because it's pretty good with Trophy Mage, which is one of our better tutors. It can also, as a copy effect, it's kind of nice that it's an artifact that works with Cloudstone Curio because it doesn't enter as an artifact. It doesn't keep its other types. So if I clone a Dockside with it, Cloudstone Curio will still trigger and I can bounce it back or bounce it between it and Roger, stuff like that. We're on the Machine God's Effigy, of course. Relic of Legends, one of our best cards. Can also loop with Ragavan and Cloudstone Curio with Roger, make a bunch of mana. No Magda to do that. Enchantments, there's some interesting choices. Utopia's Pearl and Wild Growth, they're a lot better with the more untapper type effects you have access to. Earthcraft being another one of them. Carpet of Flowers, it's good when it's good, like I said. Copy Artifact, a card we're just seeing more and more of. There's not that likely of a chance you get to hit one of the things you combo with, I feel like, with Copy Artifact. Incredibly notably, there's no One Ring here. So that's like the only way they're getting a One Ring. And then Song of Creation, it's a weird one. We don't really storm too well, but we do make a lot of mana. So if you get it into play and you're able to cast like any other spell, it's an okay chance you might just get to combo off, though it is a little odd to see in a deck that it's not really known for being able to storm, really. Lands, we're still on the Manamo, even though we're not on the One Ring. Still pretty good with Cradle, some of our other cards. We're on the E-Zone. I believe we're on Crop Rotation. Yep, we were. We're on the Shifting Woodland, on the Talon Gates. These are just great cards right now, especially in this kind of deck with Crop Rotation. Nothing else especially standing out in the mana base. So a couple interesting swaps. Not running the One Ring is pretty uncommon, so that's kind of cool to see. Running like, I guess, Song Creation in that same slot. May not read as like the craziest Rog Thras build, but it's actually pretty different from some of the lists that I've showcased. Another Sisay. Subscribe to Double Sleeve MTG. Let's see how many different ones there are. We got Geodrone Dahada here. It's a decently popular option. Well, we can't skim too much. We got these stupid Assassin's Creed cards. Decent amount of dorks. Esper Sentinel, Ragavan. A Braz Mirror, which is Boros. When it or another non-token historic permanent enters the battlefield under your control, it does 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. So it's a Boros Legend, which they really don't have any of that they're interested in running, especially at 2 mana. It doesn't really do much other than be an outlet, I'm guessing, towards the end of the game. Mount Doom does a pretty good job of doing that, but the main thing being it's an outlet that also is Boros at 2 mana, probably makes it a more interesting consideration. Then we have a Dimir one as well. You cast a historic spell, draw a card, can't be blocked this turn. This ability triggers only once each turn. When it deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So again, it's a cheap Dimir option, which the deck hasn't really had any of. You do cast historic spells. You don't cast a million spells, but you do as you're setting up. You know, you cast a Sisay at some point, you cast a Lotho or a Kinnan in the early game. So it will draw you some cards. Curious how well these played out, them being 2 colors and being like nice ways to get your colors that you might not have online. Probably a pretty nice little thing that just makes them like kind of gets them over the hump that they need to be playable. We'll see how they end up shaking out. Talion here, which was in the last one. 3 tutors, they're on the Eldritch. Enlightened Tutor here, which means we're more likely on like Smothering Tithe or something. Silence, we got the Strix Serenade, Horde, Forces, stuff like that. So like just slightly different choices here. Artifacts, Relic, One Ring, Mamber, okay, nothing too wild there. There's just Smothering Tithe. We're a Deafening Silence build. We're not doing the Oath of Nissa or the Cultist. 28 lands, Abstergo Entertainment, Legendary land, add colorless, 1 tap, add 1 mana, 3 tap, exile it, return up to 1 target historic card from your graveyard to your hand, then exile all graveyards. That's pretty hot, actually. Lets us buy back one of our legends, as well as just be graveyard hate that sits in play. It's pretty expensive. It's basically 4 mana and you lose your land. Seems pretty good to me, actually. We're also on the Mount Doom, so still have that as an outlet. Tarnished Citadel. So yeah, we're really tryhard, we got the stickers and everything. Looking to take advantage of some of these Assassin's Creed cards that are really prioritizing like historic permanents. So maybe that's the thing you can expect to see in more Sisay lists. Next up, we're taking a look at Arcum Daggson, another mono blue artifact combo commander. So Arcum Daggson, target artifact creatures, controller sacks it. They can search their library for a non-creature artifact, put it into the battlefield. So we can turn like our little combat courier into a Godpharaoh statue or Portal of Phyrexia or Clock of Omens or whatever we might need. We're going to be another kind of artifact utility deck. So for artifact creatures, we got the Walking Ballista, help us win. Combat courier, well, 1-drop that does something. We might be able to loop it to draw our deck. I'm not really sure. Crashing Drawbridge will give our Arcum haste. That's pretty nice. Mirror Convert, a mana rot on a creature sword. We see that with Ornithopter as well. Silver Mirror. Spell Sky to protect our Arcum, presumably. Ethereum Sculptor artifacts are getting cheaper. So we got lots of little artifact utility stuff like Emery, Forensic Gadgeteer is really nice, Reality Chip. Blaring Fleshrakers are nice. So when you cast a colorless spell, you make a 0/1 spawn that you can sack and add a colorless. And when a colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, it can deal 1 to each opponent. We can definitely probably set up some kind of scenario to loop through our deck and deal 1 to every opponent and have them die. But also, again, cast a 0 mana rock. It's mana positive with Glaring Fleshraker, which is pretty sick. Filigree Sages, kind of expensive, but untapped artifact. We can probably go infinite with that. Metamorph, Urza, kind of more stuff you expect. And again, Volatile Stormdrake over Gilded Drake. What is going on? Sorceries. We got Artifact Tutors, Windfall to refill, Seagate, and then Mist of Lorien. Another bit of interaction. We've been seeing this card slightly more lately, as in I've been seeing it. Instant, bunch of free stuff, Dramatic Reversal. We can probably pretty easily win with ISO Rev. We'll see. This is just a good card in some decks. Like, we have a bunch of tap effects. Our commander is a powerful one. We have a bunch of mana rocks lying around, presumably. We got 29 artifacts. We got a whole bunch of rocks. We got Lava Spur Boots, another haste enabler. We got the keys to untap. We got Torpor Orb to stop people's ETBs. Isochron Scepter. So we do have the ISO Rev. Salt Monolith. Rings of Brighthearth, we can go infinite there. Might be on the power artifact too, we'll see. Sculpting Steel to copy. Simulacrum Synthesizer, Modern All-Star. ETB Scry 2, another artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters the battlefield, you make a Construct. Clock of Omens could probably do something with that. Staff of Domination, we can draw through our deck once we get infinite mana. Encroaching Mycosynth, it makes all our stuff artifacts, right? Yes, everything's an artifact. 1,000-Year Elixirs, a haste enabler, and we got some cool stuff to put into play. Like, and then also, especially if you make Arcum an artifact and you're able to do this, you're probably going to be able to go ridiculous. Not on the power artifact, but on Mind Over Matter, which can go infinite very, very easily. You can use like the One Ring to draw your whole deck. Just discard a card, untap artifact, creature, or land. Works amazingly with Arcum. We can literally just set up like Arcum, get the One Ring, and then just go off. Got the copy artifact still, Mystic Ristic, of course, and then 26 lands. Fomori Vault, another nice little utility one. We're going to have lots of artifacts in play, presumably. Mirrex, not one we've seen too much, but it is an artifact creature, which can be pretty nice. Workshop, one of the few decks can play that. And then we see like the artifact creature lands that we can run showing up here. At number 7, we have Najeela in one of its secret lair arts. It looks ridiculous. Which Najeela is this? It's looking kind of like NBC Najeela. We don't see a Grim Hireling, so just Derevi in terms of creatures that combo with it. We got a bunch of dorks. Dockside, Grand Abolisher, I mean, good cards. No Cutzel, which has been a decently popular option for Najeelas as well. Pretty lean creature count at 15. Sorceries, yeah. So we're leaning a little bit more turbo. We got Get Probe, a little more proactive. We're definitely doing Breach shenanigans with the Savine's Wreck. Good tutors. Instant. So we're on the Angel's Grace, which is not here to keep us alive. It's definitely here to just make us win. Like Final Fortune, Quick Reflexes to help push a win. On the Final Fortune, we're on Mana Drain. That's really weird. I don't think I've ever seen Mana Drain in an Najeela that I've covered. 5-color, double blue. Sometimes you do it. Artifacts, bunch of fast mana. We're still on the One Ring, Wish Claw Talisman. And then enchantments, we are on the main one's a 6. Of course, we're on Mystic Ristic, blah, blah, blah. Breach. Reconnaissance is an enchantment that has you remove target attacking creature you control from combat and untap it. Swing out a bunch, get a bunch of Najeela triggers, and then, remove from combat any of your things that might die. Protect your Najeela, stuff like that. Keep your warrior count very, very high. And then 27 lands. We're on Phyrexian Tower, which can take advantage of our tokens, but it's not as free as it is in Roxai for sure. It's a colorless land that can make black in our 5-color deck. And then Urza's Saga, a colorless land that can get J-Lo, Mana Vault. Seems kind of iffy here. That's basically my way to recast the Najeela. I can't imagine it's that often I want to lean on Urza's Saga turn 1 in this 5-color deck. This is one I never really expected to have to cover, and that is, I think it's Okaun. Okaun Zndrsplt, the coin flip boys. We're all about flipping coins at the beginning of our combat, but also any other effects that we have to do it. We got some new ones to help with that. So we got Raw Monsoon Mage. Whenever you cast instant or sorcery, flip a coin, and he makes them cost 1 less. So we're probably going to be storming off, doing some Krark shenanigans, something similar to it, but caring way more about just getting the coins flipped. Tavern Scoundrel, flip a coin. Create 2 treasures, pretty hot. Frenetic Efreet, that lets you flip coins, a whole bunch of them. Pinnacle Monk, nice new option for these colors. Roaming Throne, are these both like wizards? No, neither of them are. What do we name? Homunculus? Maybe wizard for our other ones. Treasonous Ogre, help us make a bunch of mana. And then Con Sphinx, draw lots of cards. We are on the Dualcaster Mage. Multi-duplication, Twin Flame, and Heat Shimmer to combo off with that. Sorceries, kind of stuff you'd expect. Tutors, step through, can go get us our Krark, our Secret Commander, or Raw. We might be Secret Commander Raw. Instance, a whole bunch. Bolt. We got the Brain Freeze, so we're probably breaching. so lots of rituals. Cards like Snapback, which can kind of be like a ritual. Other free spells like Submerge, Pyrokinesis. Submerge one you really see mainly in like some of the Yuriko list, but then also the Kurok Sakashima list. Pyrokinesis is kind of cool and we don't see too often, but probably could see more play. Honestly, like if you're a red deck that is thinking about Fury, in this format, Pyrokinesis, outside of it being more counterable, is also just way better. Because like the upside of Fury in most formats is you actually want to cast him sometimes. Pyrokinesis, if you cast it, it's not really any much better. Bunch of mana, and then Krark's Thumb, the real secret commander. We get to flip extra coins. Then we are on the One Ring. There's our Breach. There was our LED, Rhystic Mystic, Copy Artifact again, popping off. Although this is a legendary artifact. I guess you're not copying Krark's Thumb, but there's just good stuff to copy now. The secret's out on Copy Artifact, it looks like. And then Planar Chaos, beginning of your upkeep, flip a coin, lose the flip, sack it. Whenever a player plays a spell, that player flips a coin. If they lose the flip, counter it. Our commanders don't care just about us flipping coins. They care about any player winning a coin flip. So we have Zndrsplt in play. Anytime someone casts a spell, either we counter it for free or we draw a card. This is like crazy upside. And then we are on 27 lands. Cards like Manamo. We're on the City of Traders. Urza Saga, Thundering Falls. What is Saga like that you get? It's just some mana. If you love flipping coins, you love gambling, this might be the deck for you if you're not already just playing Kurok Sakashima. And then in 5th place, we've got Atraxa, making it back. A deck that we've seen a little bit less and less of. Playing Walking Ballista. Okay. Another way to win with infinite creature mana for our food chain. So we're on the Teferi, probably also on Kitten. Oh yeah, some really interesting includes here. Okay, this is a cool Atraxa list. We've got our Ballista. We can get infinite creature mana with food chain and then use it. Or we can also combo with Heliod, which is not a combo I've covered in a long time. Doesn't really pop up too much in decks that aren't mono white. So we've got a bunch of Dorks, Dauntless Dismantler. So you can tell we're leaning a little bit slower, right? Dauntless, Dauthi Voidwalker, card we've been seeing a lot less of. Destiny Spinner, pretty good in a food chain, infinite creature cast kind of deck. Drannith slowing people down, Lotho. Also, I think first Drannith we've seen today. Thoracle, we got the Lurrus to help us buy back some of our cards, you know. We'll see if there's any other good stuff. But you see the 6 as well, so it's looking like we're really liking to cast from our graveyard. Phyrexian Censor. That's really interesting. We can still infinitely cast Atraxa. It is hard in general for anyone to like interact once you've got infinite food chain mana, so that stuff might be cuter than it needs to be. So I'm curious why on this specifically, because it's just that in Metamorph that it has synergy with. And typically if someone's going to run one of this type of effect, it's going to be Archon. I'm not really sure on that. There might be some other thing with that I'm missing, but got a bunch of tutors. Savine's Wreck showing up here. We are using the graveyard a lot. And then Cloying Ritual, make us a bunch of mana. Instance, Angel's Grace. I believe this is Ephemerate. Another mana drain gamer. That I do see in Atraxas though. Force, Mindbreak, no Naws. Still not really seeing the Phyrexian Censor. Well, maybe we'll get there. Bunch of mana and the One Ring. Enchantments, Food Chain, Rhystic, Touch, Smothering Tithe, Trouble in Pairs. Great value engines in this kind of slower build. And then lands, 28 of them. Cavern of Souls. Urza Saga showing up. What is up with Urza Saga this tournament? Who did everybody just agree to run Urza Saga? And then Shifting Woodland, which is not one we see in the 4 color piles, but when you're playing like food chain stuff and be able to just like get back food chain from the yard. We've got Tymna Kraum, Freedom Waffle, the 12 T&K creatures he always runs since he cut Drannith Magistrate. Just leaning into our game plan. Sorceries, still on the Reanimate, One Wheel, Deluge, Instance, Pact, no offer, Into the Flood Maw. So this is not, I'm assuming not in his actual list because these aren't legal yet, but this is 1 mana, gift to tap fish. So you give somebody 1/1. Turn target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, they return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner. Oh, so you can hit any permanent. Yeah, giving them a 1/1 fish, probably not that big of a deal. So this is one of the better like alchemist retrieval style things, although it's always an opponent. So you can never use this to double your dock side. So yeah, I'm guessing wasn't played in the tournament, but is a change he expects to make. We do have the Miscast and the Dispel, which he's been playing. Swords, Path, both Red Blast, Silence, Swan Song. I don't think he's made that many changes. It's pretty much the same Tymna Kraum we're used to. We got the Naws, the Intuition, all that good stuff. Bunch of fast mana and slowish mana, and then Wishclaw. Still on the Copy Artifact and the Smothering Tithe, and then 27 lands. Notably, I hate Forbidden Orchard. I don't care so much about it with the Tymna thing as much now because I think we're doing way less Tymna, but man, it just, every pod I play in, you just never want to give anybody the 1/1. But yeah, Tymna Kraum, still putting in work. No new MH3 cards. They don't need them. Next up, we've got Narset Enlightened Master, which is one we've covered here on the channel. A card a lot of people will be familiar with. They're usually very all in on the extra combats and or extra turns or just big spells to win them the game. One of the most commander-centric decks you run. We got the Jace here. Basically just a bunch of haste enablers, mana, cards, whatever. And then Narset Haste Enabler, Torch Courier, Narset Haste Enabler, Hellkite Courser, puts the commander into play and gives it haste. Sorceries, we got a whole bunch of them. You're going to see typical ones. Jessica's Will is definitely mainly here to power out Narset, right? Like, I guess if you hit it as a free hit, it's still pretty good. But yeah, like Gamble, Rite of Flame, Sevrek, there's going to be cards any deck would run. But then we got the Narset cards. We got your extra combats, Relentless Assault, Seize the Days. We got your extra turns. And it's mainly that. Amanatu's Augury, you get to cast a bunch of spells for free. Expropriate, like, you know, enter the infinite. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your library, and then put one back. And then Razi Eldrazi, which is a super hot one. Very, very big spells that we can use our Narset to cast for free. Instance, bunch of ways to protect our Narset or keep us alive while we're setting that up. A couple of notable ones like Bovine Intervention, destroy target artifact or creature, give somebody a 2/2. One of the biggest problematic cards for us to go against is Drannith Magistrate because it shuts down casting our commander and how our commander works, because Narset exiles the top 4 cards of your library, and until end of turn you can cast them for free from exile. So we got lots of removal. We got Rushing River, let's go, bouncing stuff. Intuition, we're still breaching. Artifacts, bunch of fast mana. We got Lava Spur Boots as a haste enabler. Bunch of rocks and mana in the One Ring. And then another pretty sick one to be able to cast off Narset, one with the Multiverse, which lets you look at the top card of your library, play lands and spells from him, and then one spell per turn, cast from your hand or top of the library, cast without its mana cost. And then we got the Breach, Mystic Ristic, Need for Speed, Haste Enabler, Smothering Tide to give us mana. And then Arena of Glory, a new Haste Enabler we got out of MH3. Cavern of Souls to help make our Narset uncounterable. Halt the Bandit Lord gives creature haste. We're just running any way we can to get this thing moving quick. A pretty all-in deck on its commander. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you just cast a Narset and you're just popping off. That worked out here. They got in the top 4. Next up, we're looking at another Nadu list. Invasion Tezzeret. Similar so far. More of the mono green dorks. I think the last list we looked at just had like these two. We're on the Dosen based. Got the Untappers, On the Endurance, Scoot Swarm, and Spring Heart, Trinket Mage, no Tribute. Not doing the Quarian Ranger Ashaya thing. Sorceries, 3 tutors, no Artifact tutor here. So we got the Misdirections interaction, you know, lots of cheap stuff. Pact Negation, Quick Reflexes. We are on the Blessing and the Sylvan Paradise, so big targeters. Tameo's Safekeeping one I haven't seen, but also targets and protects your stuff. Fast Mana, Shuko, Greaves, Umbral Mantle, you know the deal on these here Nadu decks. And the One Ring, Ristic Mystic, 32 lands, so slightly higher. Cool 4-star. Okina, target legendary creature gets +1/+1, another kind of janky targeter. And Teleria, these are the targeters I was talking about. They're like kind of goofy, but it gives you triggers. Okay, so a little bit different than the previous one we looked at. Again, not doing the lands thing. I haven't really played enough against Nadu to know how I feel about the Quarian Ranger Ashaya deal, but I know most of the lists haven't been running it, and we see that here in this deck list that got 2nd place. And wouldn't you know it, we got another stinking Sisay. But hold up, there's only one Planeswalker. What does that mean? That means this is probably Clam Chowder Sisay, not doing any of that Planeswalker combo stuff. So yeah, we got Sisay, and we're keeping it lean and clean. So Clam Chowder Sisay taking this whole tournament down. If you're not familiar, that is just 5-color good stuff Sisay that uses Sisay as an outlet. Get infinite mana, you know, with like Dockside Emil or however else you might do it. Then put into play things like Cutzel, Teferi, whatever. Lock everybody out, put in Kinnan, put all your non-humans into play like Orcish Bowmaster, you can kill the table. And because you're not running all these kind of clunkier win cons that Sisay runs, you know, the Planeswalker combo stuff, opens you up to run things like Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation, Tainted Pact, Underworld Breach. We're not ad nauseing, so that is one you kind of typically see in, like, I think the traditional New England clam chowder thing. We see this called Crawfish Boil. Maybe that's different, you know. And our mana values, I mean, we still are running like Talion, Emil, those 2 4s. Like, there's still a lot of creatures too, so maybe just looking to do the Sisay thing in a 5-color shell, but not, it's almost more like building Sisay like Kenrith instead of building Sisay like Najeela, I guess would be the comparison, like traditional clam chowder Sisay. That's kind of cool and probably worked pretty well at this, what looks like a grindier event, and your card quality is just much higher than all those other Sisays. So no other like crazy notable cards out of the 99. Tiny Bones is one we've seen pop in and out. It's a cheap black legend. Sorceries, we got a bunch more here. Because we're not doing the Planeswalker combo stuff, we get more out of like running more tutors, running like a meme bet, gamble, Great with Breach, obviously. Instance. Bunch of cheap interaction. We're on the Consult, of course. We got the Abrupt Decay, Fire Covenant popping up here. I wonder if we're having to lean as heavy into removal for Op Agent. We'll see. We got the LED, Cauldron. We're on the Ring still. And then a bunch of fast mana. Touch the Spirit Realm. So yeah, we're still leaning into like channel effects to deal with the Op Agent or uncounterable ways to do it, but we're not going as crazy as some decks I've seen that were running like Long Goodbye and things like that, which we haven't seen that one too much recently at all. And then lands, we're still on the Cradle, 5-color mana base, nothing else wild standing out. Kind of like a clean mid-range Sisay build that isn't doing all the Planeswalker shenanigans. They still have a pretty easy outlet for infinite mana. They can still tutor up things that help get there, like tutor up the Kinnan early on, and then when you find the Dockside, you've doubled your mana, or, you know, get the Ragavan early or whatever. Being able to do that, but in a shell that has probably pretty significantly higher card quality. Let me know down below what you think of this tournament. Which of these deck lists was your favorite? Which of the many Sisays did you prefer? Definitely saw a whole lot of Sisays this event, kind of take control of everything. But again, got a couple Nadus, just the one Tymna Kraum, and then some of the more interesting stuff like having 2 mono blue commanders, Okaun Zndrsplt, some stuff we pretty much never get to cover. So thank you so much for watching. And as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.